Our first piece is called Berceuse, which is essentially a lullaby by Ilinsky. And now, a song without words, Vocalise by Rachmaninoff. Our next pair is a pair of tunes out of Carmen by Georges Bizet, and it's Seguidilla and Habanera. Our next song's by lesser-known French composer Lily Boulanger from the beginning of the 20th century, and it's called Nocturne, from Two Pieces for Piano and Violin.
Deborah Greger-Odell and Gerard Mathis. He studied oral interpretation in college under Lucille and Bren Brenneman, two of the country's foremost authorities in oral interpretation and storytelling. Her postgraduate work includes drama.
I am nothing. I am but a wire, and God is the power. I am but a tiny pencil in the hand of Almighty God. And no matter how imperfect we are, when we are in the hands of Almighty God, He writes beautifully. By birth and by origin, I am all pure Albanian. By citizenship, I belong to India. By calling and by religion, I am a nun and I belong to the Catholic Church. My work belongs to the world, but my heart belongs totally to Jesus Christ. I'm so happy to be here in your city of Coeur d'Alene. As I observe, it is a city of great beauty. It is very clean and very wealthy. Today, as we gather here together, we are not Catholics, we are not Protestants, we are not Muslims, we are not Hindus, we are not Buddhists, we are not Jews, but we are all children of God. Today I would like to tell you something about my life and about my work as a missionary of charity. But all of that is insignificant because mostly you want to know what you can do for goodness in the world, to show your love, what you can do for peace, and how you can do something beautiful for God. I was born in Albania in 1910, and I was born into great wealth. Wealth, material goods, but also the wealth of the spirit, which is the greatest wealth. We had a very close family, and God was at our center. We spent much time together as a family. We went to Mass every day. We said the rosary every night. And my mother, she taught me from the beginning about faith in action. She would go out into the village and take care of the shut-ins and the old people. And nearly every night, I would come home for dinner, and I would find people at our table that I did not know. And I would ask my mother when I was a little girl, Mother, Mama, who are these people? Who are these strangers? And my mother would say to me, these are not strangers. These are my brothers and my sisters. And when I was a little girl, I thought my mama came from a very big family. And when I got older, I found out that my mother would go to the streets and invite strangers in. But indeed, they were her brothers and sisters in Christ. I had a totally unremarkable childhood very normal. Nothing outstanding. I was very much influenced by my family, of course, and the church. I would read the lives of the saints, and I often studied about the missionaries of the church throughout the world and the stories that really got me interested. The young nuns in places like India, where they saved entire villages from Bengal tigers. Or the young nun who saved an orphan in a crib by killing a poisonous snake with her bare hands. So when I was 18, I decided that God had called me also to work as a missionary. Now, in those days, 1928, if you would become a missionary, you would leave your family probably for the rest of your life. In fact, I never did see my mother again. And perhaps you would only get 1 or 2 letters a year. So I gathered my family around me and I told them that I decided that God had called me to become a missionary. And my older brother, very supportive of me, he said, "Gonsha, I think you are cracked." And I told my mother. She went past me and went into her room, closed the door, and I did not see her for 24 hours. We never know what she did in that room. But when she came out, she took me and she said, "My baby, you are now in God's hands." And so I decided to dedicate my life. I joined the Irish Sisters of Our Lady of Loreto, who had a mission in India, in British-occupied India, and off I went. But my life as a missionary was not like the young sisters who saved the baby from the poisonous snake. No. I found myself in the very beautiful school called St. Mary's, operated by the sisters. This was a private school for young middle-class Bengali girls who hoped that a British education would help them get a better husband. And there I worked. I was a teacher of geography. I worked there for more than 20 years as a teacher in a very protected, comfortable environment. I knew that there was misery on the street, but I was happy where I was and perhaps would never leave. I had no calling beyond being a good teacher of geography. But then, God works in our lives in unbelievable ways. I was nearly 40 years old, and on my way to a retreat in the foothills of the Himalayas for prayer, on the train, I did not have a vision. It was not a miracle. But there was the voice of Christ commanding me to leave my comfort, to leave my school, and to go to the streets of Calcutta to work among the poorest of the poor. This was my call within a call. It was an absolute command. Christ told me what to do, but I had absolutely no idea how to do this. When I returned to Calcutta, I went to my father confessor. He had to go to the archbishop, and the archbishop had to go to the pope to get permission for me to go and leave my convent and go to the streets of Calcutta. When the archbishop asked my father confessor, what did he think of this European lady who wanted to go on the streets and work with the poorest of the poor? My father confessor, Father Van Exum, he had known me for many years, and he told the Archbishop, there is nothing at all remarkable about this lady. She can hardly light the candles at Mass. In fact, he said that he wasn't sure about my mental stability, and he even told the Archbishop he thought I was half-cracked. 2 years it took permission, and I was released to go to the streets. I took off my European habit, and I donned the simple sari of the women of India. I was given only 5 rupees and a few pieces of soap, and I was given 1 year to prove that indeed God had a calling for me. So I started a school. I went out into the very poverty-stricken areas of Calcutta, and I gathered some children around. At first, only 5. We had no room, we had no pencils, we had no paper, we had no books. We simply sat under a tree, on the ground, and I taught the children the alphabet by drawing the Bengali alphabet in the dirt with a stick. And I taught the children that God loves them. And I taught them basic hygiene. And if they were good little boys and girls, and they all were so eager to learn, so wanting something better in their lives, they were given a piece of soap to take back to their families and teach their families basic hygiene too. Within a few weeks, we had more than 50 children, and I was given permission to open the first of my schools. And again, God works in wondrous ways. Within a few weeks, believe it or not, 10 young Bengali girls, many of them in the middle class, most of them, my former students, came to me and offered their life to work for God in this way too. This was the beginning of the Missionaries of Charity, which now I want to talk about our work. Now, first of all Catholic nuns take the 3 vows: poverty, chastity, and obedience. Our sisters take another vow, a solemn vow, that we will work, labor, and live among the poorest of the poor. That means that we must live like the poor. Now, what does that mean? Let me show you. I brought today my suitcase that I traveled to Coeur d'Alene with today. And here I have everything that I own. I have 3 saris, 1 to wear, 1 to wash, and 1 to mend. I have my rosary and a crucifix. I have my sweater that I received from St. Vincent, and I've had it for over 6 years. I have a prayer book. I have a plate and a fork and a spoon. And there are 2 things that I cannot show you today that I own. I own a bucket to wash my clothes, but I usually do not travel with my bucket. And I also own 2 pair of underwear made from flour sacks, but I choose not to show you that today. Many people cannot understand how we can live like this, but Christ was poor. How can we try to be better than Christ? I'll tell you a story. People do not understand how we live. A few years ago, I was invited to San Francisco to help open a place for the homeless. And the very nice people of San Francisco renovated a 2-story building for our sisters to work. But when we came, it was totally unacceptable for us. There were far too many riches. So we asked the construction worker to remove those things. We wanted to be like Christ, and he said he could not. It would hurt too many feelings. So the next day, our sisters got their hammers and their screwdrivers, and we removed the carpet, the drapes, the dishwasher, the washer and dryer. We also removed the beautiful oak pews and kneelers with cushions. In our chapel, we only sit on the floor or kneel on the floor. And with great difficulties, the sisters and I took those items and lowered them slowly from the 2nd floor window to the alley below. And we called St. Vincent's to pick these things up, sell them, and give the money to the poor. The kind of work that we do, the work we do is impossible. The most famous work that you've heard of, but not our most important work, is the work with the dying on the streets of Calcutta. When I first went on the streets, one day there was a lady. She was in the gutter and she was dying. And nobody would pick her up. They walked over her. And in fact, the rats and the ants were beginning to feed on her body. Nobody should die such a death. So I picked her up myself and took her to clinic and hospital. And they told me she was dying. There was nothing they wanted to do for her. Take her back to the streets, and she would be picked up with their garbage tomorrow. And that began our work with the dying. There was a man we found in the street who was more dead than alive, more skeleton than flesh. He was covered only by a small rag and covered in his own excrement. We took him to our house. It took me 3 hours to clean him, to pick the maggots out of his wounds one by one. The stench was so terrible, nobody could stay in the room. We put the medicines on his wounds, covered him with a soft, warm blanket, gave him bits of water, gave him bits of food, held his hand, and he looked at me, and he said, "Mother, why do you do this for me?" And I held him close and said, "Because I love you. Whatever you do to one of these, the least of my brethren, you do unto me. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. For I was thirsty, and you gave me to drink. Because I was naked, and you clothed me." When we work with these people, it is impossible work. but we work with them because they are Christ in the distressing disguise of the poor. No one should cry alone. No one should die alone. Another work we do that is closest to my heart is the home for babies, for children. We are trying to fight abortion with adoption. Children are our greatest gift from God. We go to the gutters, we go to the dust heaps, we go to the garbage places, we go to the abortion clinics, we go to the hospital, to the prisons. We will never turn a baby away. If you need to have a baby cared for, bring them to me. We now have more than 40 homes in India alone. Every year, there are thousands and thousands of children who are adopted out to families who long for a child. The children are the greatest gift from God. A work we do that people here in the United States have no understanding of is with the lepers. There are probably over millions of lepers in the world. They are like the walking dead. It has been seen for centuries as the curse of God. Some of Christ's most important miracles were curing the lepers. They are total outcasts. In India, we have tens and hundreds of thousands. But you have no leprosy here. You cannot fathom the misery. There was a young man from England who came to volunteer, and this is what he wrote about the lepers. So you know what they suffer from. He says, the almost limbless torsos, the caved-in faces, and the lepers' tendency to burn and mutilate their feelingless limbs scarred my mind. There was an occasional rat that contributed to the loss of fingers and toes. There was a man of 40 who looked 70, who was brought in with a gangrenous leg. A rag was wrapped around it, and we had to take him outside because of the stench. When we washed it down, the water started, the blood flowing over the green flesh. Bone and muscle dropped off. The foot was no more than a skeleton, and you could see right through the leg up to the knee. A crow came down and picked up a bone that had fallen from the foot. The crow was hungry too. Why do I tell you this today? Just because you have no lepers here does not mean that your brothers and sisters in the world are not suffering. We treat tens of thousands of lepers in Calcutta daily. We monitor their disease. It can be controlled. It can be cured if caught early. We have started villages all over for the lepers to have as normal a life as possible. And in fact, they are the ones that have woven our saris to give them something to do. What other work do? We have soup kitchens. We work with shut-ins, with refugees, with disasters, with prisons, with AIDS patients. And you can imagine how busy I became after a while with agencies in over 32 countries So I approached Air India because it was very expensive to travel. And I asked them if they would be willing to give me a discount when I traveled. I have found it is not a virtue not to ask. And they rejected me. I have also found it is not a virtue to stop asking. So I reformulated my ideas, and I told them, when I asked you for a discount, I was not giving you anything. How about, for every flight that I go on, I get a discount if I would help the flight attendants give the coffee and the food. I am used to serving people. I must have said the right thing. They gave me discounts. They gave me free travel. I did not have to work. But every flight I went on, they gave me the food to give to the poor, the food that was not eaten. And now I know you asking, after hearing some of these stories, what you can do. That is the most important thing. First of all, you must pray. And you must start today. Start with just one person. It does not have to be anything extraordinary. All good deeds, all good works are works of love. So, today, go and love your family. Kiss your husband. Hug your child. Visit your grandmother. In this world, we can do no great things. Only small things with great love. You say you have no power. That's true. You have no power. God gives you the power. I'm going to tell you a very funny story I read in the newspaper not too long ago about the power of God. There was a man in your country who owned a coffee shop. The name of the coffee shop was Bongo Java. And the man in the morning was taking out the baked goods to sell at Bongo Java. One tray was a tray of cinnamon buns. And as the man watched the cinnamon buns cool down, he said it was a miracle. One of the cinnamon buns no longer looked like a cinnamon bun, but looked just like Mother Teresa. He gathered all his friends and his workers, and he said, "Does not this look like Mother Teresa?" And they all agreed. So they took that cinnamon bun, and they put it in a glass case and on the counter, and people from miles around came to Bongo Java to give honor to the cinnamon bun. Some people began to pray, hoping for miracles with the cinnamon bun that looked like Mother Teresa. I can tell you, my friends, today, the cinnamon bun has no power. And I can tell you today, Mother Teresa has no power either. It is only the power of God that works with us. And by the way, in the story, if you want to know more about the cinnamon bun that looks like Mother Teresa, you can look on the internet at www.nunbun.com. You must give until it hurts. Much has been given to you. You must give until it hurts. Yesterday, I was on your campus in a building across the way, and there were some young people in a history class, I think, and they were selling baked goods. And I talked to them. They made the baked goods, cookies and pie, no nanban. And they said that the money was going to go to a place in Peru, a school for children who had no books or paper. Now these students, your friends, gave until it hurts. On the weekend, when maybe you were watching television or playing or going to a party, they were home making these cookies with love. That is giving till it hurts. One day, my sisters and I were in Calcutta in a very poor neighborhood. And a man saw us. He waved his arms at us and he called us, sisters, mother, come here. He was almost totally naked, skinny, dirty. He just had his one little square on the pavement. But he was so excited to see us. Mother, he said. And he held out his hand. And in his skinny, dirty little hand, he had a few coins, a few pies, not worth more than even a penny. He had spent the whole day begging, and this was all that he had. But he said, please, I am so glad I saw you today. Take this money, and maybe today, because of this gift, a baby will have a better life. That hit my heart. Here was a man who had nothing. And what do I do? If I take the money, he will have more of nothing. But if I refuse, can you imagine his hurt and his disappointment? So I took the money and I said to him, this is the greatest gift today because of you. A child will be healthier, and you have done something beautiful for God. Wherever I go, people ask about world peace. Perhaps you heard in 1979, I accepted the Nobel Peace Prize. When I accepted the Nobel Peace Prize, some people were confused. The Nobel Peace Prize goes to people like heads of governments and presidents. This was going to some sisters to help the poor. Some people were happy. They were happy because every single penny, over several $100,000 from the award, went to help the poor people. And people were happy because this recognized that we can change the world with love. But some people were angry. They were angry because in my speech, I talked about what I consider the greatest threat to world peace. I have not found it a virtue to always be politically correct. In my speech, I said, I feel the greatest destroyer of peace today is abortion because it is a direct war, a direct killing, direct murder by the mother herself. And if we read in the scripture, for God says very clearly, even if a mother could forget her child, I will not forget you. I have carved you, says God, in the palm of my hand. And that is what strikes me the most. The beginning of the sentence, that even if a mother could forget something impossible, but even if she could forget, God will not forget you. our children. We want them. We love them. But what of the other millions? Many people are very, very concerned about the children of India and the children of Africa, where quite a number die, maybe of malnutrition, of hunger, and so on. But millions are dying deliberately by the will of the mother. And this is what is the greatest destroyer of peace today. Because if a mother can kill her own child, what is left for me but to kill you and you to kill me? There is nothing in between. All of you today in this room, if you want world peace, go home and love your families. I see my time is almost at an end, and so I thank you for listening about my life and about my work, but mostly I hope that you see today you can do something. You can help change the world with your love, and you can do something beautiful for God today. May I invite you all today now to join me in a prayer, if you wish. This is my favorite prayer, and it tells us what God would have us do. Lord, make me a channel of your peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love. Where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness. Where there is discord, I may bring harmony. Where there is error, I may bring truth. Where there is doubt, I may bring faith. Where there is despair, I may bring hope. Where there are shadows, I may bring light. And where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Lord, grant that I may comfort rather than to be comforted, that I may understand rather than to be understood, that I may love rather than to be loved. For it is by forgetting self that one finds, it is by forgiving that one is forgiven, and it is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. May God bless all of us. Thank you. I could invite you to ask me some questions, if anybody. Okay. We have a microphone here.
First question.
No questions? Thank you.
I don't have a question. I have a thank you for Tony and whoever brought your spirit to this popcorn forum.
Tony is full of the Spirit of God. There's a question?
We don't use the microphone because we're recording it. Right?
I'm sorry? A Mother Teresa
right.
clone? Like the nun bun? Perhaps. Yes.
Mother Teresa, aside from in your own life, can you tell me of a person where you saw the greatest change in their spirit after or through your ministry?
This happens every day. God's work in your life, in my life. There was one young girl who came when I first started the Missionaries of Charity. And like the Bible story in the New Testament, she came and she had her beautiful sari on, and she asked, is it possible that God is calling her? And I told her to go back and pray. She had great wealth. She went and prayed and then returned a week later in a simple sari and said that she was ready to devote her life to Christ. But this happens every day.
Other questions? Here's one.
Yes. What causes or phenomena such as, what would you suggest are the causes or phenomena such as world hunger, lack of religious faith, and widespread poverty?
This is a very complex question that we have been wrestling with since the beginning of time. If you are a Christian, you believe in original sin, and there is evil in the world. Other than that, most of that is just a mystery to us.
Now, I have a question for Mona here. Not yet.
Oh.
Okay, in character. Then I do have another question for you. Now, what do you see, and what do you see mankind turning to right now? Do you see that there is enough charity? Do you see it increasing, or do you feel that mankind doesn't care enough anymore?
I see such generosity. We never ask for money, never. We have no fundraisers. We have no office with computers or anything, and people see their work and they want to give. We know there's evil in the world, but I truly believe that God's love and God's grace will triumph.
Other questions?
Perhaps now's the time for me to
Come out of character. Mona
come out
Klinger.
of character. This is... You have no idea how scary this kind of activity is. I teach communication and speech, and I hope you students kind of have some glee knowing that I'm going through exactly the same kind of thing that I put you through on a regular basis. That's scary, but one of the scariest things is for me to unmask myself. I'm kind of like a Tammy Faye Baker, and I have makeup on all the time, and here I need to show you that I am not, pull my hair out, Mother Teresa, but a mild-mannered speech instructor who has devoted a fair amount of her life in the last several months into trying to do an authentic job of speaking about Mother Teresa. And this is a time, if you have any questions of me about the journey that I've had with dealing with her, or what it's like to study somebody, or what kind of insights I have about this person now, it's a good opportunity. Is this scary, though? No makeup, no hair. Yeah.
Here's the question right here. I'll come.
Have you known anyone that has met Mother Teresa in person?
It's amazing how many people, when they heard I was doing some kind of research on Mother Teresa, I would get emails, oh, so-and-so knows somebody. I didn't meet anybody particularly, but everybody had known somebody. And it's amazing the reach that she has had. The most remarkable thing, I think, is that she didn't begin this until she was 40 years old. And then her work was all, and her work is God's work in over 32 countries. But everybody wanted to share a story, and that was kind of exciting.
Last year you played Margaret Sanger. What was it like playing two totally different characters?
Well, my husband will probably tell you I'm fairly schizoid anyway. Margaret Sanger, of course, is a very controversial, powerful woman in the United States who was considered to be the founder of the birth control movement in the United States. And then we have Mother Teresa. In some ways, some similarities in that single-minded, having a great vision, knowing there's a purpose, that we can say is similar. Other than that, very different. In fact, I got a call the other day to perform as Margaret Sanger at a very nice activity in Spokane. I would actually earn some money at it, and I declined because I didn't think I could change from Mother Teresa to Margaret Sanger like that,
In doing your research, how did it affect you personally with her beliefs and her devotion and her single-mindedness in giving up everything to help all these people that people would not even touch or even go near and just ignore?
It's unbelievable that people would have that kind of generosity of spirit and love. And as she said, the work is impossible. Impossible. And, of course, she also said that you had to have a wonderful sense of humor and a total joy in life, knowing that you were doing this for a greater good. In terms of how it affected me, I'm very thankful that I'm a dormant Catholic, and having all that background was, you too, a lot of us in here probably, it rejuvenated a lot of those wonderful experiences that I had as a child growing up. I, too, read the lives of the saints. I, too, read the stories of missionaries. I wanted to be a missionary for a short amount of time until I went to college. And I found it re-inspired me. It really did. One interesting thing I have to point out that as I was doing my research, it is amazing to think that here's a person, and not just herself, but all of her thousands now of sisters. Some orders in the United States have gone to maybe a couple of dozen, where her order has grown to several thousand, and yet they have nothing. But I was surprised how many websites are devoted to the truth about Mother Teresa. That she was a self-promoting person, and the things she didn't do. That really surprised me, how we could be so critical of people such as Mother Teresa. Nobody's perfect, I realize that, but to take all that energy and time and to have whole websites devoted to this was really quite remarkable, I thought. Yeah. And I guess no good deed goes unpunished. Is that?
Yes. Mm-hmm. One more question, then we'll be closing. Anyone? Okay. By the way, this is a member of the Convocations Committee and the Popcorn Forum Committee. They helped us so much. Jerry.
Thank you. In doing your research, how much of a relationship did you have with Princess Diana? Because both of you were humanitarians.
Yes. There was a real attraction between the two. I mean, total opposites. My friend Allie Vogt gave me a tape of Princess Diana's funeral and Mother Teresa's funeral. Total opposites. And there was something in the two of them that connected in the spirit. Mother Teresa was also criticized for having that friendship, by the way. Why would she hang around with such people as Princess Di, who's so glamorous and this kind of thing. But they really did connect on a very basic level. I know Princess Diana at heart was a great humanitarian. And I think there was something that, especially for Princess Diana, that kind of completed her personality by seeing Mother Teresa's work.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we close today, let me just make one comment. Mona Klinger on our faculty, there are other faculty members that are in this program, our staff, 5 or 6 students are performing this week, people in the community, and it's from their dedication that this series has become so very popular, as well as our scholars who come from other places. Mona Klinger is a beautiful example of quality education and what our faculty is all about. She's an extraordinary human being, and it's through this format that there is a great increase in the learning process at North Idaho College in our community, and we thank her very, very much. And we hope you'll be with us at 1 o'clock when a number of our people will be on a panel at the Student Union on the top floor. I want to remind you tomorrow when Della Warrior comes from Santa Fe, New Mexico, she'll be speaking on beauty from the American Native perspective, and she's bringing with her a beautiful art collection, which will be in the Student Union all day tomorrow. Please have a good lunch, and we'll see you at 1. Let's thank Mona Klinger once again.
Thank you.